So what if I told you that your ChatGPT agent could be tricked into sending all of your data without you ever clicking anything or downloading a file? Well, that's exactly what Radware researchers discovered with a new zero-click vulnerability called ShadowLeak. Now, this is the first of its kind attack, but it tells us a lot about what we can expect in the new age of AI. So let's break down what ShadowLeak is, what OpenAI did to mitigate it, and most importantly, what it means for enterprises in this new era. So ShadowLeak is what's called a server-side zero-click exploit. And what that means is that this kind of attack entirely uses OpenAI's cloud services. Unlike traditional attacks which use security fatigue, confusion, high-pressure environments, or simple phishing, this attack uses the fundamental services themselves within OpenAI's deep research agent and uses a pretty novel methodology to exfiltrate data. In other words, there's no network traces, no attack signatures, and no real alert that the vulnerability is even being used. Redware CTO David Aviv put it this way: "This is the quintessential zero-click attack. No user action required, no visible queue, and no way for victims to know that they've been compromised." Now, Radware put together a demonstration to show how this attack works, and it goes something like this. First, an attacker sends an email to a victim with some pretty specific instructions nested within that email. And then ChatGPT's deep research agent, which is designed to automatically use your inbox data in emails, scans that email automatically. Those hidden instructions are then executed without you even knowing that it's happening. And that can exfiltrate everything from names to addresses, crypto wallets, financial information, even critical internal documents. The attack then concludes with the rest of the instructions being carried out, sending that data to a remote server that is controlled by the malicious actor. Now, this vulnerability arrives at a really pivotal point for both OpenAI and AI in general. More and more enterprises are building AI into their core systems. And for enterprises, an attack like this has pretty critical implications. A single compromised mailbox could exfiltrate all of your internal data. Critical financial information could be linked, causing regulatory fines. And CSIOs are now looking at a new class of attack for which traditional tooling is just simply inadequate. And Radware calls this a new kind of attack called AI-driven covert exploits. And ShadowLeak is just the first of many to come. Now, to be fair, OpenAI has patched this issue. Radware alerted the team on June 18th, and by September 3rd, OpenAI had released a patch. But that still means this kind of attack could have gone undetected for months. And this attack highlights some pretty critical weaknesses in the AI approach itself. It's about how AI works within the enterprise environment. It's highlighted the risk of increasing AI autonomy, especially when the AI has access to lots of data. These agents often act without any human oversight, and that level of autonomy can be easily hijacked. It's also shown a big spotlight on the fact that traditional tooling just isn't built for this sort of attack vector. Firewalls and endpoint detection will only get you so far, and when the tool itself becomes an attack vector, traditional tooling is kind of useless. Now, in theory, Radware says that there's no signs this attack was actually used in the wild. But because of the nature of the attack, we can't actually be sure that that's true. So what can enterprises do in the face of this sort of attack? First, everyone should be building with compliance by design. What that means is that AI agents should be provided data as opposed to just letting them have access to all the data. If an agent needs access, that access should be limited only to what the agent needs to actually get the job done. If you control what the agent can see, you can control the vector of the attack. Secondly, you should be using continuous monitoring systems. Now, traditional tools like that wouldn't have stopped an attack like this, but it would at least tell you that more data is leaving the system than is typical. And by detecting that symptomology, you might be able to work backwards to find out that this attack is happening. More critically, enterprises should be adopting a zero-trust architecture approach. What this means is that every request has to be validated, and when every request is validated, it's harder for these sorts of attacks to fly below the radar. And finally, you need to stay up to date and train your teams on compliance. Organizations like Radware do a lot of testing, so there's a wealth of information about these attack vectors and what is more likely to hit your organization. You need to keep up to date, because your attackers certainly are. The big takeaway of the story is that ShadowLeak is just a harbinger of what's to come. AI autonomy brings crazy power, but it also brings incredible risk. And my gut instinct is that this attack vector just scratches the surface of what's to come. If this breakdown is helpful, please like, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and here on YouTube, and check the description for the full report from Radware. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.